Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. Okay, so again, starting with a question again. How many of you, when you talk about or reflected on the history of narcissistic abuse you experienced, particularly if it happened when you were a kid, how many of you were told that that really bad treatment you received was good for you? To take that on. Can really feel galling to hear someone say that something that hurt you so bad could have been good for you. Because, again, drop in the comments how many of you have been heard or been told that all the meanness, cruelty, awfulness, or even abuse of a narcissistic relationship, that it was somehow good for you. It's terrible to consider, but yes, some people, they believe it, they certainly say it, that the abuse of a narcissistic relationship, things like, well, you're still standing, so it couldn't have been that bad for you, or, oh, come on, it wasn't that bad for you. It gave you a stronger back, a thicker skin. It gave you character. I call BS on that. I don't think there is ever a scenario in which being invalidated, manipulated, or gaslighted is good. I just don't. It doesn't build character. There are far better ways to build resilience that don't involve breaking down someone's soul and leaving us full of self-blame. And suffering, obviously, and any existentialist will tell you that, suffering can certainly be harnessed to learn from, but I don't think that anyone needs to suffer to become a fully formed person. This was good for you model is often bandied about in situations in which a person experienced childhood narcissistic abuse from parents. And interestingly, especially, let's say you're doing well as an adult, you're succeeding in your job or in school, you'd hear things like, well, it couldn't have been that bad, you're doing just fine. I think that this definitely falls under gaslighting and feels like a gaslighting maneuver. There are many reasons a person may be just fine in adulthood despite having experienced narcissistic abuse, including still jumping through hoops in a futile attempt to try and win over that narcissistic parent, or having had to figure stuff out on your own to survive, which is very inefficient, but it's still, at the same time, still having to bear the burden of the skittishness, the vigilance, the confusion, the self-doubt, the trauma bonding that keeps you stuck in other relationships. Framing something that harmed you psychologically as being a good thing, it's not okay. You may have learned from it, but there were other ways to get those lessons. There is a prevailing wisdom out there that all childhoods were difficult, and having a narcissistic parent is just one version of a difficult childhood. Frankly, first of all, I don't believe that. And also, I don't think difficult childhoods do anyone any favors. Is any of it avoidable? Probably not. Narcissistic people will continue having children. The mental health system will continue not addressing it. And so unless a child is experiencing physical harm or what we consider reportable abuse, I'm confident these cycles won't end, and this cycle is actually why shrinks are going to be in business forever. Now, as we come out of the shock and awe of the holiday season, which is when we originally made this video, too much family time just unfolded for a lot of folks, and having to replicate and face down these family narcissistic cycles that you may have been able to deny for a good part of the rest of the year, you may have actually heard this sentiment from your family that, oh, don't bring up the bad stuff from the past, it was good for you. It's revisionist, and it is invalidating to hear this at any age. Listen, some of your parents may have rationalized it to themselves at the time. Sure, I'm hard on her, but it's good for her. Yeah, he went through a lot with his dad, but it made him the man he is. Yes, it did. And that is not a good thing. Narcissistic relationships, especially from parents, leave us with some tough scars that never fully heal. Challenges with close relationships, self-doubt that holds us back in careers, anxiety, underestimating and undervaluing ourselves, selling ourselves short. None of this is good. Yes, we may have become survivalists, but I'm not sure that that's a good thing. If someone does say this to you, it kind of goes back to that conventional wisdom I've shared on this YouTube channel in the past of, should I call a narcissistic person out? And my answer to that is always going to be a resounding no. So telling them, in the same vein, telling them that, like, no, what you did to me did not make me stronger or tougher. And just because other people go through this, or this is how it was in other generations, doesn't make it okay. It's frankly a meaningless discourse to get into with someone who's harmed you, and them trying to spin a feel-good story about how your adversity shaped you is part of their system of denial and rationalization. The fact is, they aren't listening to you anyhow, so having this conversation with them, pointless. Over the years, as I have worked with clients who got stronger, who became parents themselves, and think to themselves, oh God, what happened in my family of origin? I couldn't do this to my kids. But also sometimes found themselves falling into some of the toxic patterns of their parents. Parenting after you've experienced narcissistic abuse as a child can always feel like a battle zone. As I said, there will always be narcissistic parents, and there's no policy in the world that will change that. The best I can hope for is to get knowledge out there so folks early enough in their lives so they not only don't blame themselves for their parents' mistakes, but may be able to address them in a way that ends intergenerational cycles. I am personally witnessing a lot of folks who endured narcissistic abuse as children who are doing a really, really great job with their kids and ending these cycles. We may be able to learn and grow through suffering, but there's definitely a smoother path up that mountain that you didn't get to take. And someone trying to gloss over that painful path as being good for you, well, that's just straight up manipulation. I was recently talking to a group of people where there's a mix of folks, some who really went through it tough as kids and others didn't. And I was thinking to myself, like, the people, and I knew them well, and the people who had been through narcissistic abuse as kids in that group, I was thinking, like, if anyone ever said, pick the team you want to take into the jungle or the desert to survive with, no brainer. It was the survivors of narcissistic abuse. There was definitely an adaptability I saw there that the other folks, maybe a little bit too soft, wouldn't be able to do it. If you ever were to go in the fires of hell, I would definitely be really good at that. But that survivalist mindset can be a little tricky, because just as people who've been through this often do build up some really strong survivalist skills, the vigilance, the awareness, the figuring out all the exits, as it were, all the paths forward, that kind of heightened awareness also gets taken into life when it doesn't need to be so survivalist. And a lot of bandwidth goes to that. Don't tell me that was necessarily good for us. Okay, sure. Because most days I am not trying to survive in a hostile climate. I'm just trying to live my life. That survivalist mentality, not so sure that it necessarily is always doing me a favor, but give me a call if I'm ever stuck in the jungle. I'm sure it's going to do me just fine. Thanks again.